Cell diversity. As I'm sure you know, there are many different types of cells, but in this lecture, I want to talk mainly about prokaryotic versus eukaryotic cells, then briefly about the two types of eukaryotic cells that are a major focus for this class, plant cells and animal cells. So hopefully most of what I talk about for most people is review from high school biology. Also, if you've had organismic biology, you probably learned a bit about prokaryotes because all prokaryotes are single-celled organisms. There's no such thing as a multicellular prokaryote. So many organisms are in fact just a cell. Both prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells have a cell membrane, cytosol within the cell, and DNA, which is the genetic material of all life on Earth. Both have structures called ribosomes as well. Although prokaryotic ribosomes have a slightly different structure than eukaryotic ribosomes, they have the same function, which is to make protein. The term prokaryote means before nucleus. So prokaryotic cells lack a true nucleus, meaning they do not have a membrane-bound nucleus. Their DNA consists of a single circular chromosome that's not enclosed in a nuclear envelope as it is with eukaryotes. It's hanging out in the cell in what's called the nucleoid region. Eukaryotes, on the other hand, have a true nucleus, meaning that their DNA is enclosed in a membrane, which is referred to as the nuclear envelope. Unlike prokaryotes, eukaryotes have DNA in the form of multiple linear chromosomes. Additionally, eukaryotes have other membrane-enclosed organelles, while prokaryotes do not. Membrane-bound organelles include things like mitochondria, the Golgi apparatus, and lysosomes. Basically, prokaryotes don't have any internal membranes. However, one thing prokaryotes do have that eukaryotes don't is a cell wall made primarily out of something called peptidoglycan, in addition to a cell membrane. Now, this is a point that needs clarification because some eukaryotes do have what is referred to as a cell wall. Plants and fungi, for example, have cell walls, but they're completely different from prokaryotic cell walls. So in order to be perfectly clear, I'm going to clarify that prokaryotes have a cell wall composed primarily of peptidoglycan, while eukaryotes do not. I also mentioned previously that prokaryotes are only single-celled. Many eukaryotes are single-celled as well. In fact, most of life on Earth is microbial. However, eukaryotes can also be multicellular. The differences between the two different types of cells has clinical significance. Many antibiotics target structures present in the prokaryotic cell that's not present in the eukaryotic cell. Otherwise, antibiotics would kill our own cells too. The cell wall is a common target, as well as ribosomes, which, as I mentioned earlier, have a slightly different structure in prokaryotic cells. Although there are many different types of eukaryotic cells that range in size, on average, eukaryotic cells are much larger than prokaryotic cells. Because of their structural simplicity, prokaryotes are limited in size. Because they don't have membrane-bound organelles, which eukaryotes use to transport substances throughout the cell, prokaryotes have to rely on diffusion in many cases, which means that no part of the cell can be too far from the environment because all cells need exchange with the environment to obtain nutrients and get rid of waste. Being small means they have a high what's called surface area to volume ratio. So again, no part of the cell is far away from a surface. I know a lot of you are going to go on and study human anatomy and medicine, and one thing you'll find is that many of our organ systems have evolved in a way to maximize surface area. And I mention this now because this is an important concept going forward, not just for this particular topic. One thing I want to emphasize is that although bacteria are simple structurally, don't be fooled, they're extremely complex biochemically. They can carry out many biochemical processes that eukaryotes cannot. prokaryotes are ancient and highly evolved, highly successful organisms. As fascinating as prokaryotes are, this class is a bit eukaryotic centric, specifically multicellular eukaryotes. So I just want to briefly mention a couple major differences between the two types of cells we're going to talk about quite a bit, animal cells and plant cells. And we're going to get into a lot more detail as we talk about the specific processes that take place inside these cells, but here I just want to point out a few major differences. Basically, plant cells have everything that animal cells have in terms of organelles and then a few extras. One difference is that plant cells have a large central vacuole for storage that has many of the same functions as lysosomes in animal cells. They also use this for growth. They're able to fill it with water to expand the size of the cell. Plant cells also have, in addition to a cell membrane, a cell wall. Now remember, this isn't the same as the prokaryotic cell wall. It should really have a different name, whereas the prokaryotic cell wall is composed primarily of peptidoglycan. The plant cell wall is composed primarily of cellulose, which, as you may recall, is a polymer of glucose molecules. And finally, plant cells contain chloroplasts, which is the organelle that allows them to make their own food. If you have any questions about any of this material, please don't hesitate to contact me.